Hi, Dave Tigner here. So I've been looking for an inverter, and I ran across this one called CNBOU. Not a lot of information on it on YouTube, and it seems like it's a pretty good unit, and the factory that I called, the customer service is like the best I've ever seen. So I thought that I would just do a little opening the box here, and I'll show you it being installed, and at least there'll be something out on YouTube that actually gives this device a little bit of credit. So first thing I'm going to do is open it up. These guys are based in Price, Utah, and the name of the company is called Continuous Resources. So they are actually the North American dealer for CNBOU. So anyway, so we'll open this up and see what it's all about. Okay, so we've got our on-off switch remote. That was an extra item that I purchased with it. You don't have to get that if you don't want to. So it's got a, looks like a, so this is our positive battery cable. It looks like two 6-gauge wires in parallel. So about 3 feet long. And there's something over here too. Oh, these are the covers for the battery terminals. Okay, black. Same here. The black one looks like the same setup. Maybe they're only 2 feet. It looks like they're only 2 feet long. So 2 feet, 6-gauge, double 6-gauge wires. Okay, and the owner's manual. Basically, it's the same information you find online, which is very limited. That's the only real downside to this, and that's why I wanted to record something that actually kind of showed a little bit about the unit itself. Pretty heavy duty. The nice thing is the guy that I talked to at Continuous Resources here, his name is Matt. He's their technical guy. He's put his card in here, and he's also already sent me an email checking up on me to see if I have any other questions or if there's anything he can help in getting this set up. So we'll just unpackage this. Pretty good size unit, as you can see. So on the back side here, a really nice fan. A lot better than the one I had before. So really big to make sure that it stays cool, plus your terminals for your positive and negative on your battery. On this side, we have two 110 plugs, plus we have our connections for our just if we want a direct wire, and that's how I'm going to do it, is I'm going to direct wire it. It does have a little USB thing for charging USB, and our remote control plug, and also an LED readout. So when I actually install this, I'll go into a little bit more detail on that portion of it. But this is a unit. This is a 3,000 watt DC. The nice thing about this is pure sine wave. So the difference between pure sine wave and modified is, if you were looking on a wave oscillator type machine, the wave actually is, you know, uniform. On a modified, it actually square, so it goes down and it's square, and so that little bit that gets cut off there can cause issues with your especially your sensitive delicate type of equipment. So the nice thing about pure sine, that's exactly what you get in your house, and so that's what I'm looking forward to having this. So we're going to plug this into our RV here and see how that works out. So more to come. I'm going to go outside, take this outside. I'll show you where I'm going to install it. Okay, so here we are in my compartment. I did have to mount my charger to the other wall so that the CNBOU will mount upright. So I'm going to mount it right straight in front of us there. And the battery cables will run right through that hole where the charge controller's cables run through, and they'll come into my battery compartment. So I have 6 Trojan batteries, total of 720 amp hours, and this gives me a working 360 amp hours because they're lead acid. So in this case, my ground is up here in the corner, and my positive is down here on this little block below my switch, so that the only time that the inverter or charger, anybody's doing anything with the batteries, is when my power is turned on for the coach. Otherwise my batteries don't have a load on them. So to get started, we're going to mount the inverter up here on the wall. So I'm going to go ahead and get that mounted, and then I'll be right back. Alright, so I have mounted the inverter. I went ahead and tied in the cables for the ground and the positive for the battery, so that I could actually measure this, make sure that this was going to fit here before I got that screwed in. So got plenty of play in the positive and just not a lot of play in the negative. So anyway, currently everything's shut off, so I'm going to go ahead and wire these in, screw them onto the terminals nice and snug, and then we'll be back to finish that off. Alright, so I've got the positive and negative connected nice and snug. They come with these little covers to protect everything. One thing that I did notice, that to make this fit, you've got to kind of trim this hole a lot larger. It kind of depends on the cable that you use, but this is the cable that they gave me, so it should have fit. So that's kind of a negative, but easy fix. So it kind of just slides right on there. They also have this little nut that screws onto just a plastic nut to screw on into that to kind of protect itself. So same way on the top, and it is on. So Continuous Resources is actually, I said, it's located in Price, Utah. That's just south of Salt Lake City, where I happen to live. Matt is the guy that's been helping me out, and so in actually looking at his card here, I'll actually zoom in on that. He's actually the president and CEO of this company. They're actually the U.S. contact for this company, so they are the ones taking care of all of this. And it's a pretty nice unit, pretty heavy duty, but there are some drawbacks to it. Matt was saying they use this cable doubled like that because it's a little cheaper for them. I don't like that idea, so I'll probably be swapping those out for my own cables at some point. They're 2 feet long. If you go any longer than that, you definitely need to have some larger gauge cables. Okay, so let's go ahead and turn the unit on. You got an on-off switch here. Okay, so I can turn that on here, and then it just cycles through and comes up with its voltage. Then you also have a remote switch. So this is the remote switch, but the remote switch doesn't do anything if it's turned on here. So you got to turn this off, and then the remote will work. So you can turn it off and on with the remote that way. So just be aware of that. Okay, so here's the back of the unit, and you'll notice that it's got 2 plugs and a direct connect bar. Now the issue with the direct connect bar that I see right off is the connectors are clear down at the bottom, so if I can't really bring the wires in on the bottom side without them touching or being really close to touching the actual base of the unit, so shorten it out. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually come out the top here where these other ones are coming out, and so I've actually got a connector that, you know, I can just put on the end of my wire, and then I can just screw those in there. So what I'm going to do is I'll just put those ends on, solder them on, and then heat shrink on there just to kind of make them look like this, and I'll just come off the same side, and then that way I can put the little guard that comes with it back on to kind of protect itself a little bit. So anyway, so that's what I'm going to do there. Now the question is though, which is which? You know, which is the hot and which is the neutral? I would almost think black is hot, but I'm thinking, because they wired the other ones up as red is positive, black is negative, and I'm betting that the red is actually the hot line and the black is the neutral, and then green is the ground. So the way to test that is I'm actually going to use my ohm meter, and I'm going to, if you look at the plug here, there's one side that's bigger than the other side, and that's to make sure that you plug it in correctly, and you don't get the neutral and the hot swapped. And so I'm going to use that to my advantage and kind of test that, and I'll show you on this other plug kind of what I'm talking about. Alright, so here I have a regular plug. This happens to be a GFI, but you can notice that this is a 20 amp plug. A lot of people only have 15 amp. So the 20 has a little side piece over here on it that normally you don't see in your house. But you'll notice that this one side is larger than the other side. So I'm going to put my tester in the shorter side, and you'll notice that it's on the copper side of the plug. So if I look at the differences, this side the little screws are silver, this side they're copper, or they're goldish color, which determines that's the side that typically you would put your black from your house, which is your hot side. That's usually where you're going to screw that in. And then usually you put your white, your neutral side, on this white lug. So right now I'm plugged into this connector right here, and to test this I'm going to take my ohm meter and I'm just going to touch this, and you can hear that high-pitched noise, meaning that that's the side that's connected to. So that's the little side. If I go into the big side, then I touch the silver connector, then I hear the connector there. So I'm going to do that same kind of a test up here on the inverter. I'm going to plug the meter into the big socket, the big connector, and then I'm going to actually test here to see which is which. So I don't know if you can hear that very good, but I get the high-pitched noise there and I don't hear. So meaning that this is my neutral, the black is my neutral, and if I swap that to the little side of the plug, my red is the hot. So based on that, then we know that the black is neutral and the red is hot. So on my connector, I've got to make sure I plug my black into where it's red here, and my white into the black on the inverter. So that's kind of screwy, and the documentation says absolutely nothing about that. Like I said, you know, when Matt and I were talking, we guessed that the black was the hot, but truly that's not the case. So I'm going to go ahead and prepare my wires, and then we'll get those connected on there. Okay, so now I have the wires all soldered, heat shrinked, and connected to the device, and I've also got the safety cover back on. So I've got the remote plugged in here. Remember, you have to have this in the off position on the box itself, and then the remote works. So let's go ahead and turn it on. Actually, I'm going to go ahead and plug this little tester in here just to show you that when we actually get power there. So turn it on. We got a blue light, It's just come up to speed and the light came on. So we are at 120 volts, 0 amps. Now one thing that's interesting is that we have an open ground. I'm not exactly sure how that works. I'm going to check on that and see what I can find out. Well, I took just a minute to call the RV shop just to kind of check on this, and it was explained to me that, you know, when your unit is plugged into shore power, you are hooked to a grounding rod that goes into the soil and grounds your vehicle to the earth ground. Okay, so it's going to show, both lights are going to show up as normal ground. When you are running a generator, the generator field creates a grounding field, and so that's why when you're running the generator, your little tester, light tester, shows correctly. Okay, when you're running an inverter, it does not have a grounding field or anything, and so it'll always show an open ground. So this is perfectly normal. Okay, the important thing with an inverter is that it's grounded to the frame, and I have that grounded here. This is my ground coming from the frame, and it's actually grounded to the outside of the inverter. Also, the green wire that is the ground on the direct connect is wired into my ground bar on my transfer box. Inverter is working great, so now I'm going to show you that direct wire connection, where it goes and how we tie that into our coach to make our lives a lot easier. I've put in an electrical transfer switch, which is the big black box, so it automatically switches between the inverter and the generator and shore power. Some units you buy will have an automatic switch in that goes from your landline or your shore power to the generator. On this particular one, this box right here is the generator, and this is my main line. So if I want to plug into shore power, I plug that in, I pull that out and I plug it into the pedestal. If I want, when I'm done and I put it back in, then I plug it in here so that, you know, it can be run off the generator. And so that box goes into the black box. The black box has a connection coming from the inverter, and it switches between the two. So the generator and shore power take primary, so if those are on, then this transfer switch will flip to those first. If they're not there, then it defaults to the inline. I mean to the inline inverter. So inverters there. Up here at the top, I've put a box in here with a breaker on it, 20 amp breaker that actually comes off of here, so that when I'm on generator or I'm on shore power, it powers that particular box, which has a line run down to my converter, so that's what charges the battery. So when I'm on inverter, the inverter's not trying to charge the batteries at the same time, so it kind of just splits those apart. So that's it. We're looking forward to using this inverter to make our lives a lot easier as we're traveling and boondocking. So we'll see how that works as we go along. Talk to you later. Bye.